Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Glad you're along for the ride with us this week. As always, my name is the Kev. I want to thank everyone who tuned in last week with Mr. Harvin from fullpresscoverage.com. But I have another great guest for you tonight. My guest this week has traveled all over the world performing all types of audience for all types of audiences, from A-list celebrities to strangers in the streets. He has been to several countries on national television, radio, and in Las Vegas. In addition to his entertainment, he has always had the passion for speaking. Growing up, he discovered this ability quickly and always enjoyed engaging in a variety of conversations and was able to think on the spot. Realized that he could combine his ability to speak and his magic to help others and spread positive messages. Everybody, please welcome Josh Pele Magic.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited for this episode. Very excited to be here. And thank you for having me.
Cool, cool. Well, when you agreed to be on with me tonight, I was excited because once upon a time I tried my hand at magic, and not at your level, yeah, but because like I'm a comedian, so they kind of run hand in hand a little bit. We run into each other a lot, and they kind of go hand in hand. But what I would do is simple stuff like take it to the bar, try to fascinate the girls, all that good stuff. My friend John said the best trick that I would do is when I pulled out my deck of cards that I could make all the women disappear.
That's actually good for like a comedy routine. I should
Yeah,
use that. If I ever do stand up,
yeah.
use that.
I have a lot of questions for you. Before we get started, do you have like an icebreaker trick or anything that you use?
Yeah, actually, this is my standard trick that I do whenever I go to a show.
Okay.
During COVID, had to kind of brainstorm and decided to come up with a virtual version. So typically, as you know, it's you have a deck of cards and you show someone a deck. So in this
Sure.
case, because you can't choose a card, I'll let you just name one out loud, just so you're
Okay.
happy with it. So you could just give us a card.
Okay. I'll be cliche and say the Ace of Hearts.
Ace of Hearts. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the deck. I actually do not know where it is, and I will work with your Ace of Hearts. There it is. So I have the Ace of Hearts here. Now for this trick, usually people can choose the card, they could find it, but it really doesn't matter what card they choose. And the way that this works is we start with an Ace of Hearts. There we go.
Gotcha.
And you put it on top. It's easy to find when it's on top. So you slide it in the middle, and with one snap, it will come right back. Now, a lot of people think that I'm doing something there. So what I'm going to do is during this part where people accuse me of, say cheating or sleight of hand, which some people would say is not magic, then normally I would let the audience member do it the second time because, again, we're virtual. It would look something like this. I would have the audience member cut anywhere they like. I would have them put the card back in the deck, complete the cut, and that's all it would take for that card to come right back.
Cool.
Now, the last phase of this would be canceling out all you get accused of. So when you do it the first time, they say you're doing something, it's sleight of hand, it's not magic. So I say, how about you try it? And they're like, yes, let me try it. So as you see, the second time they would do it. And then the third time they say, okay, but technically you put the card there or I put the card there, but I didn't see the card. Maybe it wasn't the card. And that's a valid way. So the third part and the final phase of this is to show that is actually the Ace of Hearts. So we take that Ace of Hearts, clear as day, right in view, and we push it in.
Sure.
We even, let me keep it in frame. We even move it to about the middle, like this.
Okay.
Push it in, and you even show that it's not there yet. But all it takes is one snap for that to come all the way up here.
For those of you listening audio on Wednesday, he go check this out on YouTube. It's going to be up all week. Go check it out up on YouTube. It's definitely a visual thing. We have quite a few of our listeners that like to listen audio when they're driving in their car. When this releases audio on Wednesday, but go over to YouTube and go check that out. That was awesome. I have a question. Why isn't sleight of hand considered magic?
It is considered magic, but one of the things about magic is just the nuances of it. So, for example, when you start a show and you take out your deck of cards, there's going to be a million different people that will instantly say, "I know how this is done,"
Okay.
and there's millions. There's so many different card tricks in the world. I can't even count how many. But for people, if they know one card trick, they just associate that with that's what they're about to see. So when you take out the cards, everyone goes, "I already know this one." And then you obviously do your trick and they realize they have no idea what you're doing. And another thing with magic is that reactions you get, like sometimes people are like, "Oh, that's truly magical." "Oh, that's just sleight of hand." Like their rationale for how you do some of the things is just like, which yes, sleight of hand is a skill that you develop, but to certain audiences, they have that rationale to the point where, "Oh, it's not magic. He just did sleight of hand," which is a
Huh.
very vague statement given the vast variety. That's like saying, it's like if someone's doing like a comedy routine, right?
Right.
And there's so many different components of comedy, and there's so many different types of jokes you can make, types of plays on words, types of stories,
Sure.
right? And if something's funny, right? Someone says something, everyone laughs, and someone just goes, "Oh, it's just comedy." Well, it's not really why everyone laughed. They didn't laugh because it's comedy. There was some component or a variety of components that made the joke funny, right? You
Right.
can't just say a joke and expect people to laugh. I don't know if that's a good example, but it's kind of the same play. There's people that would just be like, "That was just funny because it's comedy," which doesn't really explain why it's funny. But to them, that they know how you made that joke. They understand where the joke came from. It's just comedy. People laugh. So for the
Sure.
same reason, people would be like, "It's just sleight of hand." That's how he did a magic trick, which doesn't really reveal anything, but to them, it gives them that feeling that they understand it completely. It's just sleight of hand. That's the reason. That's all they need to know, and they're content with that. They're not mind blown because they feel like they explained it, which at the same time has no explanation whatsoever.
I was gonna say because a lot of magicians make a lot of fucking money doing sleight of hand.
Mm. Yeah, Stefan, there's so many tricks that are sleight of hand, but sleight of hand is like it's like a topic. For example, if you sneak a card away from the top like this,
Right.
right? I snuck it from the top of the deck.
Okay.
I sneak, if I do the same thing and I sneak a card from the bottom, that's two different things. Sneaking a card from the top and sneaking from the bottom are two different moves, two different sleights, but they're both sleight of hand. So to say something is sleight of hand doesn't give you an explanation. For example, in mentalism, which is another genre, or I guess adjacent genre of magic, which I do, is the illusion that you can read someone's mind. So if I had you think of something and then I plucked it out, or made the illusion that I plucked it out of your mind, I guess everyone's like, "Oh no, he just did mentalism." Well, the same way, there's a lot of different ways in which you can pull off a trick, a card trick, a magic trick, a mentalism effect that doesn't really give you any information. But to some people, just explaining it for the category that it is enough for them to not feel like they were shook or blown. It's just magic, or it's just sleight of hand. That's how he did it. He did this. But again, sleight of hand, there's a million different things. There's ways to shuffle cards. There's ways to rearrange a deck, hide cards, palm cards, you know, vanish cards, appear, every single thing. Even just plucking a card out of thin air is already another type of sleight. But to them, sleight of hand is just one thing, and that's how it has to be
Right.
done. So that's what I mean when they say sleight of hand is it is magic. But to them, that's an explanation of how you did the trick, which doesn't really explain anything.
And when you say them, you mean the audience?
Yeah, so certain audience members
Okay.
might just say, like, they know the term sleight of hand, they associate it with magicians. They're just like, "Oh, you just did sleight of hand. That's how you do it." And that might not even be true. There's a lot of different some tricks. A lot of them do require sleight of hand, but there's a million tricks. There's tricks that don't need any skill whatsoever. And if you do a trick like that where it's the cards are self-working, well, that's no sleight of hand at all. Anyone can do it, but people will say, "Oh, it's sleight of hand, everything's sleight." But really, there's tricks that are, yes, sleight of hand. You practice, you have a skill. Some tricks that are just they work on their own. They're self-working. Some tricks are, mathematical. It doesn't matter what card it is, but if it's in this position and you move it this many times in this order, it's always going to end up third, and you just know it's the third one. Psychological effects where you're not even relying on your moves, you're the experience with the person. You're psychologically suggesting, forcing, or influencing them to derive a solution, a card, or an image. The possibilities are endless with the stuff, but to most people, it's all one thing, and that's what they explain it as
Do you guys get hecklers?
all the time. Oh, I love it.
Okay. Yeah, screw those guys.
Well,
But it's a it's a necessary evil to deal with.
oh, hecklers, I think hecklers are really good actually, and obviously no one wants hecklers, and it gets annoying. But hecklers can be fun because if a heckler calls you out on something just
Sure.
to be a dick. Well, that's a good example for a newer magician or newer entertainer. Right? You could be a comedian. You're gonna have a heckler in comedy. Sometimes someone says something. That's
Uh-huh.
a really good opportunity for you as a performer because one, that's a great place to practice crowd control. Right? If your material is
Sure.
good and people are enjoying it, it's a great feeling. But that's not helping you improve. Right? It's those moments where say you're a comedian, you're making a joke and someone says something, interrupts you or that. Same thing if you're a magician, someone wants to call you out, they think they don't. That moment right there, how you improvise, how you play it off, or how you handle that situation, that's a great way for you to grow as a person and account for, you expected your show to go this way, this popped up. How do you handle it? That's a really good opportunity, I feel, for people to grow if you're an entertainer. And also funny, maybe you prepare for those. So for me, I have tricks where if someone's going to try to call me out, I have something for them in that moment that I will pull
Yeah.
out. It'll be very funny. Same thing like if you're a comedian, right? You make a joke and maybe you make a joke about like getting women and someone in the crowd has to yell like you get no girls and you have something funny. That would be so perfect because now it's an illusion that you wanted that to happen. So that's kind of magical on its own. You could
Yeah.
play as well. So that gives you a new realm of entertainment, right? If he never said anything, you could have never gone this angle. So it's a really cool opportunity. Hecklers in general, they suck, and that's not the type of person anyone want to be. But I feel as a performer, you should actually enjoy those moments because that's where you can get a new type of organic routine effect for comedians, comedy, a new type of way to present whatever you're doing that can't happen any other way. You can't do it without a heckler. So pivot it to your advantage. I think it's a really fun angle to play on.
That's a funny example that you brought up because I have an answer to that exact, thing. I have been accused of being if you wanted to stereotype me, a rage fueled comic. And I have an exact answer to the oh, you don't get any women. Well, I've got two kids, so somebody had sex with me twice. At
That's great.
least.
That's so good.
So it usually gets that about that reaction. But I just because the magicians that there's no I mean there are magicians at like your local open mic
Mhm.
or things of that, but when if I were to go to like 10 people on the street and say, hey, who's your favorite magician, I guarantee you most of them would say either David Blaine,
Mhm.
David Copperfield,
Mhm.
Chris Angel, or somewhere along those lines, or Penn and Teller,
Right.
somewhere along those lines. But if you get into the clubs and you get into stuff like mentalism and you get into, almost hypnosis, things of that
Mhm.
nature, and then, straight, card magic and traditional magic, there are a lot of great people out there that no one's really ever heard of that
Right.
do these amazing things. And I think I was talking to somebody the other day and say they were saying that now the thing is to create your own, dare I say, tricks or routine, or anything like that. But what is what do you consider magic? What's magic to you?
To me, magic is it's the experience that someone else gets. There's like I said, there's a million different tricks you can do. There's a million tricks that I know. There's so many tricks I know and I'm never gonna do. I don't want to. And that's just not my style. Just like a comedian, right? You have so many jokes you probably heard, and some of them are probably even funny, but they don't fit your set.
Right.
But what's like, at the end of the day, if your audience walks away, happy, excited, a moment that they've never experienced, then that's really magical. It's not about what trick I do. It's not about how cool it looked. It's not about how well I did. It's about that interaction that I have with them. So that when I walk away, if they feel like they saw something cool and like they liked what they did, no, that's not a bad thing for someone to enjoy what you did, but that's not magical, right? There's a lot of
Sure.
cool things people see. But if they walk away feeling truly, astounded, astonished, or inspired even, if I can excite those types of emotions, that's magical. And it doesn't necessarily come down to doing a trick. It's just finding the right moments for the right people. For example, if you and me went out to lunch or dinner and maybe I knew you're a soup guy, right? I know you really like soup. You're probably going to order the soup. This place is famous for soup. Of course, you're going to get it. And I notice you don't have a spoon. Instead of pointing it out to you, I somehow, or maybe I get up and I go and grab an extra spoon, or I just hold on to an extra spoon because I know at some point you're going to need it. And you don't notice that there's no spoon. And the menu comes, you look at it, you see the soup that you've been dying to have, and you order the soup. You're so excited. The waiter brings it over to you. You get this soup, and now you're so excited to eat that soup, and now there's no spoon. And you're like, wow, I have no spoon. And suddenly I'm like, I have a spoon for you. That moment, as simple as that sounds, that feels like true magic because you're so excited for
Sure.
the soup. You don't have a spoon. That spoon to just appear. That feels impossible. That feels just how because you had a need and I solved it for you. As simple as one spoon because you need to eat soup. But that moment that you will feel, and I promise anyone that's listening that says that's not what I would feel, if you really wanted that soup and you were really excited and you did not have a spoon and someone just gave it to you, you would feel amazing. I don't even lie. You know you would. And those types of moments, that's kind of in a very simple form, but that's what I want to transition to when I perform. What kind of magic I want, what I think is real magic. That feeling you would get when if you really were hungry for a soup you've been craving and you didn't have a spoon, that moment you felt when someone gives you a spoon, that's the real
Sure.
magic moments I would want people to feel.
I think anybody in that's a really, really, really good analogy for anybody that's in entertainment. That wants to entertain, one way or another. I that's awesome, dude. I'd never heard that. But that's awesome. So, what's the first trick that you learned, man?
My story is pretty unique. A lot of people usually grow up with a magic kit that they liked, watching Penn and Teller or someone on TV, something in their childhood, or seeing a magician live, and that moment was so crazy to them that they
Sure.
wanted to learn magic. Or that for me, I didn't really have any of that. I really got into magic like 3 years ago, very randomly. I was on a trip to Italy, and back then, planes weren't as advanced, so Wi-Fi on planes and TVs weren't as popular. You really didn't have that kind of entertainment options as you do these days. And so for me, I'm thinking, what would I do on a 6.5 hour plane ride if I can't fall asleep? And I didn't really like reading. I think a lot of people would jump to bring a book with you. I wasn't a big reader, so that's out of the question. So if you can't use electronics and you can't read and you can't sleep, what are you going to do for 6.5 hours in a seat? And my thing was, I need something to play with or fidget with. So I grabbed a deck of cards with me, not thinking anything of it, and I'm playing around with them just like a normal person would. I don't do magic. I don't know any tricks. But as I'm playing through it, like a lot of cards have designs. Like you see these cards have this really cool black design, nice colorations, and like because of that, these like the queen kind of looks like a ghost. There's so many different
Sure.
designs. Like on my wall right here, I have a whole wall of decks. It's all normal decks, but because of the different designs, the colors are different. The faces, Jack of Spades on this deck looks like a ghost. On that one's gonna look different. And I was playing around with it and I had an idea for a trick. I noticed that on one of the jacks on the deck I had, like in this deck, you can see it's kind of just like kind of lines across his collar. On the
Correct.
deck I had, these lines were hearts, and there were three of them. And I had this thought: what if I could somehow get people to choose a three of hearts? And when I show them the jack, they're going to say no, jack is not three. But then I would ask them to look closer at the collar because I would just find a reason to justify why you should look at a color. And then they would
Okay.
look at it closer and they would see one heart, or they would see one heart, two heart, three hearts, and they would associate there's three hearts there. They chose the three of hearts, and maybe they would get good reactions out of it. So the idea came to me. I landed in Italy and I wanted to test it out. I started walking around the streets doing a lot of street magic to people that don't speak English and I don't speak Italian. But every single time, the trick got very good reactions. And so that was my first ever trick.
Nice. Nice. Do you um fancy yourself more as a card magician or
Yeah, I would say a lot of my stuff is card and general magic. For me, like I said, that moment of soup is I always think of like moments, I'm at a club, I'm at a venue, I'm thinking what would be very cool. And I look around and I choose really any objects. I do a lot of card stuff, mainly because I always have a deck of cards on me and I carry it. That's how I open my shows. There's a lot of effects I know with them, but I do magic. In my normal show, I'm going to have tricks with cards. I'm going to have tricks with pens, coins, rings. I have just about every object. So I would be a mix of a card magician, but mainly I'm just a magician. I use a lot of props, and they're not like anything. Someone can give me their ring. Someone can give me their business card, their credit card, a bill in their wallet. I do tricks with a variety of miscellaneous objects. Sometimes I just come up with stuff on the spot. So for me, it's a mix of the cards because I'm gonna have them with me anyway, and then whatever I see at the venue, I go. Maybe it's an open bar. Maybe I'll do a trick with some of the alcohol. Maybe one of the brands sponsoring the event sells like vodka. Maybe I'll make shots appear out of their vodka. Maybe I'll do something like that. So I'm always brainstorming in the moment magic with what's around me, my surroundings, which makes me more of a general magician, miscellaneous type of stuff. But the cards are always something that I'm going to have with me and I'm going to do a lot. So cards, mentalism, and general magic would be my three main categories.
So we're not cutting anybody in half.
No, I do stage. Yes, I perform stage shows, but not as much. Most of the people that book me and most of the events I'm typically doing are very focused on a certain thing. So an event usually has a special guests coming, a weddings, obviously around the bride and the groom. A lot of the things that I don't want to do stage shows in those moments because I want the attention to stay on the guests. I don't want that moment of everyone look at me. It's my turn. I want you to enjoy the bride and the groom if it's their wedding. You to enjoy the guest if it's their event or their party. And I'm just gonna work my way through the room and do my own things. But sawing people in half is definitely a stage thing. It's fun to
Right.
do. It's expensive, honestly. It's probably
Sure.
the main reason why I don't really like doing it. Is just the expenses of getting it, carrying it, setting it up, moving it around, and actually doing it. It's a lot of nuances.
Sure. Um, I find when you do special events, specifically if they are situated around one person, like a birthday, or I mean, I just did a wedding a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
and for us, they're kind of difficult because everything's centered around that one person. But I did a kid's birthday once, not as a comic. I told you I dabbled in magic a little bit
Mhm.
and found that that was my audience for that stuff because they were easily fooled. But and I'm going to try to talk in code here because I don't want to really give anything away.
Mhm.
But if you are familiar, I know you are with the with this,
Mhm.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You know, would you call that probably one of the most basic magic tricks out there?
Actually, I would say no because it's very common in a lot of
Okay,
magic. That's one of the first things people learn. That's one of that. But that's one of the things is people call that a magic trick, and in
right,
reality, it's not. It's actually a utility device. And the reason for that
okay,
being is a magic trick is, like the first thing I did today, I did a trick, right?
right,
That trick is how it always looks. I can't do that same thing differently. In theory, I could, but the idea is a trick is a trick. That coded message is that's
right,
a prop, but that prop can be used for a lot of different tricks. So in the most common ways that you do for kids and the applications of that for kids, yeah, it's pretty common. You could do different things. People usually use coins, silks, bills, but there's so many different tricks you could do with that. And as you become more advanced in magic or learn or use your own ideas and be creative, you could do a lot of things with it. Things that like I would use that for, any age, not just kids. I'll use it on even people that know what it is. I have lots of effects that I can do on people who even know what it is and they would never even suspect it. So with that, I think it's yes in the application that you likely used it for. And of course, I didn't see what you used it for, but I would make a guess. That's one of the most basic tricks. But at the same time, that thing it's like a holy grail. There's so many cool things that you could do with it. And as magic grows and as everything grows and technology grows, there's only going to be more effects made. I think that that's also a very advanced thing too. and depending on which routines you choose to use with it will depend on how basic you're going with it.
I'm pretty sure a handkerchief was involved, but you
Yes.
probably already knew that.
Yeah.
We do have a comment. Um, our friend Jay Jones, he asked, with card tricks, is it more tricking the person manipulating the deck, or just having extreme knowledge of the cards that you are using?
So I would say none of those. And thank you, DJ J Jones, for the question. The first thing I ever say is when I do shows, there are always people like, "Oh, you're not going to trick me," actually, and I always tell them that's fine. My goal as a magician, I'm not trying to trick anyone. I don't want to fool anyone. I don't want you to feel dumb. I don't want you to feel stupid because you're not. Just because you don't know how a trick is done does not make you dumb or stupid or anything less of what you are before I began. What it is, I'm here to entertain you. That's what I am. I'm an entertainer. I don't care if you figure out how a trick is done. I don't care if you think you know how it's done. I don't care if you, well, I care if you like it. That's really all I care. I want you
Right.
to just enjoy it. So I'm not tricking anyone. I'm straightforward with what I'm doing, with what I'm performing, and I want to do it with the hope of at the end of the day, you enjoy it. In terms of manipulating the deck, no, it's not about manipulating deck. Some tricks do involve that. You have to manipulate the deck. Maybe you need a specific card in a specific location. Maybe, maybe you need some kind of setup. Maybe you need something prepared a certain way. And when you start the trick, it might not be set up. So you need that manipulation, use some of your skills to get in the position you're ready to. But that the manipulation comes down to the effect. If you're doing an effect that needs the cards manipulated in a certain way, then yes. But there's a lot of effects that, are free. Like the first trick I showed, if you see, for anyone listening and watching the live version or see the video, that's a free effect. I don't need to manipulate the cards. A person can take any card. It doesn't matter. The cards can be in any order. It doesn't matter. And I will do that trick. So manipulating the deck comes down to the trick you're doing. There will be tricks where you might need it manipulated, and that's okay. If you choose one of those, then yes. And then you don't need extreme knowledge of the deck. A lot of routines are they're very free and open and organic. You could use any deck and any order and it doesn't matter. So you don't need to trick anyone. Just, if you're trying to trick someone, that's probably already a bad sign. You want to entertain them. That's the first thing. You're not using extreme knowledge of decks. A lot of tricks are very simple. You could learn a trick in 10 minutes, and that could be a very great trick. If you do it and people really enjoy it, it's phenomenal. So no manipulating unless you need to, no extreme knowledge needed at all, and you're not tricking anyone.
While we're talking about decks, um, what are your thoughts on, say, and people can Google this, so I'm just going to say it. What are your thoughts on, say, a Svengali deck?
Sure. Svengali decks they're awesome. One of the things with Magic nowadays and technology is a lot of things are out on the internet. There's a lot of
Sure.
tutorials. There's a lot of people who know what a Svengali deck is. So it's now, now that there's more people aware of what it is, it's a little more ear of caution that, you go do a trick because you can't turn back. If you go and do a trick with that and someone calls you out on a Svengali, you can't switch to a normal deck afterwards. Once they're like, oh, you suck, you have a Svengali deck, that's over for you. You can't take another deck and go because they don't care. And they'll be
Right.
convinced that every deck you have is Svengali, even if it's not. So you got to be a little more careful nowadays. But even with the Svengali, there's still, Magic is such a niche entertainment. People have not seen Magic live. They see it on TV. Maybe, a lot of people don't know what that is.
Right.
And so it's a very great, the routines you can do with it, the effects you can do with it, again, are kind of like the first item that we talked about. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. I think it's a great item. I usually don't carry too many around with me. I probably will here and there just for new content that I want to put up and post and some new stuff that I want to perform. But it's really just as an entertainer, we're as magicians, we're aware that people know what that is nowadays, but at the same time, we're aware that someone knowing a magic prop is so niche at the same time because no one's looking up all this magic stuff. So I think they're great. I think they're awesome. I don't use them enough. I feel like I should use them more. I do really like them. Not something I would carry to most of my gigs, but I love the things. They're like $7. They're very cool. And if someone wants, someone listening is interested in doing a really cool magic trick in like 10 minutes for your friends or your family, I would say buy one for if you have $10. They're not even $10. Get them for like 6 or 7 and free shipping. Get one, play around with it. They're very, very cool. So I love those things.
Do you know who Dan Harland is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you're familiar with his, or with the website he's affiliated with, called Penguin Magic?
Yes.
Okay. So again, I don't, there's kind of a code to entertainers that I don't want to give anything away, but a number of years ago, um, a audience member of mine was asking, about magic, and again, I'm a very novice, but I kind of watch stuff, and I'm pretty aware, because I'm sure, like, when you watch another magician perform,
Mhm.
similar as to when I watch a comic perform, we watch them differently than normal people.
Right.
Normal people watch them to be entertained. We're watching for different things.
Mhm.
Me specifically, stage presence, things like that, how they operate the microphone, how they pause, timing, stuff like that. Um, so there was a trick, and I've got a point here. Just takes me a second sometimes to get to it. There was a trick where the guy picks a card, he signs a card, and then it appears in his wallet, which is in his back pocket.
Yes.
Um, I understand there's probably a gimmick, dare I say, use that word to that. Um, Maybe,
Mm,
but I mean, we're not teleporting things here, and people get that, but maybe we are. I don't know. But do you use any, like you called them, props?
mm.
I mean, is that a prop trick? Not to give away the trick, because
Um,
it's a fabulous. If you could do that to somebody, like at a bar or a restaurant or
mhm.
something like that, to where you make something that they signed appear in something that you've never touched before. I think it's a wonderful. It's just a wonderful piece of entertainment.
Yeah. So yeah, I do carry props and gimmicks sometimes. It's again which tricks I want to do. Sometimes I'll just do, a full organic show. I might not carry anything on me but a deck of cards and just
Sure.
do tricks with whatever I find around. For that trick specifically, a card getting signed and appearing in a wallet or in a possible location, that's a very, very old trick of magic. It's one of the probably oldest, most popular tricks. And so it's yes and no in terms of is it a gimmick or not. And the reason for that being is that's one of those effects that you could do a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different people doing that trick and they all perform it differently. So as a comic watches another comic, as a magician you would have to watch the performance itself to decide which method is he using to pull off that effect. And so there are versions of it where it's gimmicked. You have something you need to buy and keep it prepared, but at the same time there's versions where you can give me any deck of cards. You could take a deck off your bookshelf if you have one. You pick any card you like, you sign it, and I can do that same routine. So you could do it non-gimmicked, you can do it gimmicked. The only difference is which one you prefer as a performer.
So, see if you agree with this. Somebody told me a long time ago that when a magician is performing and he says, "Hey, look here," the actual trick has already been done.
Uh, Most cases, there's definitely a lot of that where they say look one way or lose something else. They're not always doing something somewhere else. They might have already done the dirty work or the secret work, as it's called. Like it depends on the trick. Sometimes, there's no dirty work at all. So when they tell you to look at something, maybe it hasn't been done yet. Maybe it gets kind of depends on how they're playing out the effect, what the effect is, and what they're trying to accomplish in that moment. But there's everything. There's cases where nothing's been done, something's been done, or maybe nothing needs to be done at all. But in terms of like a lot of these things that we talk about, is so vague that there's an avenue for each one where you're doing something, you're not doing something, or it doesn't matter. And so it's like a case to case thing. You got to see it specifically to tell. Like people ask me, how did this guy do this trick? And they tell me about the trick. I tell them, I don't know how he did the trick. And it's not that I don't know how he did. I know the trick they're talking about. I do it all the time. But if you ask me how a specific person is doing it without showing me them doing it, then I have no clue. Because on my side, I have like 6 different ideas of how he did it. And the one I do is not necessarily the one he does. I have to see which one he's doing, and the only way I could tell is literally watching it. So it's very, very a vague thing without like for a magician to see. And no, and like any magician will tell you, if you ask a magician to explain how someone did this trick, unless it's a very, very specific trick that has only one way of being done, they won't know unless they watch it.
When I go see a magician, I don't want to know. I want to be entertained. That's why I pay my money to go see a magician, except for this one damn trick, and I can't find it. Whoever is running the magic tricks on Google or YouTube has done a really, really, really good job of putting out either misinformation on how to do this, because the one thing I tried it and it didn't work,
Mhm.
and is that damn Russian doll trick. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Where
With go ahead.
they start pulling all kinds of stuff, out of that thing, in with the bottles and all that good stuff. I saw it done here in Florida, and I immediately went home. I looked it up. I'm googling it. Nothing.
Mhm. So you're
YouTube.
saying
Nothing.
so there's a few Russian doll tricks that can. Are you saying the one where they had like three and they're putting something in, and then suddenly later on they open and now there's something else under it, and there's more items just keep appearing under them, kind of like
Well,
cups.
well, there's that, and then
Mhm.
there's one with like the Russian doll bottles or whatever,
Yeah,
where
actually,
there's
nesting
three.
dolls.
Yeah, there's three, and then there's like 10, and then there's like one. Yeah, I mean, I
Oh, where
kind of
they're like multiplying and then disappearing and
yeah,
multiplying again.
yeah, and I kind of get the concept of it, but then they pull somebody out, and no one can ever tell me or convince me that when somebody is pulled out of the audience that they're not a plant.
Mhm.
Because I just think they are. I was at a Copperfield show in Vegas, and he started throwing frisbees in the field or in the audience to pick people at random, you know, and I swear to God, those frisbees are remote controlled, and I'm just
Yeah.
kidding, but um, but when they start pulling people and they start inspecting things and all that good stuff, unless they pull the person next to me who came with me, I'm
Mhm.
not believing it.
Yeah, definitely. I
Because
think definitely there's not stooges in these shows, and if there are,
okay,
then that person's a very, very bad. There are people that they may have selected or like may have wanted to be the person to come up, but that doesn't make that person a stooge. A stooge is someone that's completely in on it. Sometimes magicians do, and I'm not going to go into detail, but there's
sure,
there's stages to a show. There's a topic called pre-show, and so before the show begins, a magician might do something to help for his show later, and that might come as simple as maybe he had a conversation, an innocent conversation with that person, or something along those lines, something that happened before the show. Now, that person is unaware that anything happened or anything done. So they're completely innocent, just like you and everyone else. But to the magician, he may have planted a seed that's going to grow later in the show. There's methods of that. There's a lot of things. Again, it depends on the performer, the show, the routine, but that can be the case is that a performer on stage did specifically want certain people, but not because they're stooges, because they know that that person's likely to help them pull the effect they want from either prior preparations or something like that. But that person themselves is completely in on it, and they're going to be just as shocked as everyone else. The reactions aren't fake, the props aren't fake. The person's actually just like anyone else. He's wanting to see a show. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He's looking at these props just like you would examine them, looking for any flaws or nuances or caveats. But at the end of the day, it may be the case that that person was not planned initially, but at some point the entertainer decided that would be the perfect person to have up on stage. And whatever the reasons are, that could, again, that's a plethora of reasons why someone might be perfect. Even as simple as, right now I see you're wearing glasses.
uh
Sometimes people there's tricks where people want specifically someone wearing glasses. They don't care about anything else but the fact that you're wearing glasses. And so they can't choose anyone in the audience that's not wearing glasses. And if they don't see you wearing glasses, that's a gamble. Saying like, "Hey, sir, ma'am, do you have glasses on you?" They'll choose you because they see you wearing them. That might make you a perfect target for a specific trick. So there's a lot of different things you might need.
Do you? I know you probably have a go to um, card trick.
Yeah, my go-to is the one I showed you at first. That's
Okay.
my go-to in the sense that that's always my opener. That's what I like starting off every show with. When I go to my shows, the first people I see, the groups I walk to, that's how I open up my show. I start with that, and then from there, what I do next, I never have a go-to second trick. After that first trick, I go into anything I want, but that's usually the very first thing I start with in most cases.
And
if it's
again, if you want to see the magic trick, kick on over to YouTube. If you listen to audio on Apple or Google or Spotify or wherever, go over there. We do have the listener text line open 305-563-2342 that comes through here. But if you're listening now, then you're on YouTube because this hasn't been released yet. What do you have a go to when it comes to mentalism?
Mhm.
And I'm interested in that because that has to deal with the human brain.
Yes.
And do you have like a go to? I don't want to use the word trick because it's not really a trick. What's the word that you guys use?
Yeah, you can use a mentalism trick, a fact, routine. They're all interchangeable in a way.
Okay. Do you have a go to one that you could do for us tonight or?
Yeah, this is one of my most popular ones in my shows when I'm doing mentalism. So I could show you here. Let me I'll grab a pen. For those listening, ordinary pen and paper. This trick is just something. I just need something to write with, and some place to write it down. So
Okay.
it does not matter. It really does not matter what you could hand in real life. You could hand me a pen and a paper from your desk, and
Sure.
you'll be fine. But the way this works is I'm going to write a prediction. I'm going to make sure that I see this. Let's keep this in frame. I'll pick it up when I start writing, but
Okay.
I'll give you categories. So when I do this trick, I usually have a few different ways. I actually have a lot of different categories, but to keep it simple, I'll just give you a few that we could work with. Anyone you want. We could do groceries or celebrities or beverages or movies. Which one would you like to work with?
Movies.
Movies. Okay, so we're going to do movies. I'm going to make a prediction. So I'm going to keep it in frame as I write. So I have this three of hearts, just the closest thing for me.
Okay.
And I'm going to write Keb will choose, and then I'm going to write a movie down. Keb will choose, and I'll show that's actually what I am writing. And then now underneath, I'm going to write the name of a movie, but I don't want you to see it until the end.
Sure.
Okay.
Right now, there's a bunch of people listening thinking that they know which movie that you wrote down.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope that'd be even cool if this. I'm going to fold this up,
Okay.
and I'm just going to leave it in sight. And I do need to talk, so I'll
Sure.
just put it over my ear, just so
Okay.
it's as close to frame as possible, but at the same time, my hands and arms are free. And in my phone, we're talking about movies. I have a list of movies. There's 100 different movies in it.
Okay.
What I would like you to do, and the reason I write this down before I start explaining the trick is so you don't think I'm using any information you gave me. You haven't
Okay.
said anything, you haven't told me anything, so I can't use that to influence what's on my ear.
Gotcha.
I have 100 different movies, and they're numbered 1, 2, all the way down, and they're all different. And I'll show you that in a moment. What we're
Okay.
gonna do is you're gonna give me any number 1 to 100. We're gonna open up the list. We're gonna go to your number, and whatever movie is next to your number, that's the one you get. So please give me any number 1 to 100.
67.
67. Now, some people listening or watching might think that that's the number I wanted you to select. So to explain that that is not the case, and this is generally a free choice, I must give you the option. Do you want to stick to 67 or do you want to change your mind?
I want to stick with 67.
Sticking with 67. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to show my notes. Hopefully there's not too much of a glare.
Okay.
Okay. And I have notes right here. I might even move this way. That might make it easier. Oh, that's much better.
Oh yeah.
This is my notes, and I have this list, 100 greatest movies. Do you see that?
I do.
And it's not numbered by like which one's the best. It's just 100 different ones. So it's not so number one is The Godfather. It's not saying The Godfather is the best ever. These are just 100 very popular, famous ones.
Sure.
And you see that number two is Shawshank Redemption. Then we got Schindler's List, Raging Bull, Casablanca, all very popular movies. And you see that
Correct.
they're all different. So if you said any number like here, if we said 27, you would have gotten Doctor Strangelove. And then all the way to 100. So if you said like 99, you would have gotten North by Northwest. So you got a lot of different movies here, all
Okay.
popular. Your number was 67.
Correct.
Okay. Please remember number 67 for me. You got it?
Okay. I
You
got it. Yeah.
Now, before we began, before you said any number, before anything, I made a prediction right here.
Okay.
Now you said 67. You saw what was number 67, correct?
Correct.
I wrote a prediction. What was number 67 for the
The
audience?
Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
A perfect prediction.
Wow. The Wizard of Oz. Okay. Okay. I have no freaking clue how you did that, but I'm sure I gave it away somehow. Or is there, I'm gonna do like the normal thing. Is there something behind me that said Wizard of Oz on there?
No, no, that's not.
But
We got to do like
wow.
I found this in my room cleaning, so I'm going
Yeah.
to use it now. We did the trick. Give
Nice.
a round of applause. I found this
Nice.
little machine.
We do a lot of I do a lot of trivia sometimes, and when I'm talking to sports guys or comics, or I mean we talk to all kind of people, and I have this thing, when they get it wrong.
Awesome. Yeah, I
Um,
realized like this machine, I bought it as like a toy a long time ago. I was cleaning my room and I found I was like, with all the like the stuff I do now on video, whether it's like virtual magic shows or Omegle content or podcast, I should use it. It's funny.
sure, sure. Um, do you do a lot of mentalism or stuff like that in your shows, or is it more stuck
Uh,
to visual?
yeah, I like to incorporate mentalism as much as I can. I think it varies on the show. Sometimes people will hire magicians and say, "Hey, like I want you to come and only do mentalism, or I want you to come and do magic, or I want you to come and do both." So for me, it's a mix. I like doing things again. I like making it personal. So in that case, movies is personal, not super personal to you. I don't know if you're a movie buff, but
I
I have
am.
a bunch of
I'm a big
categories, right? I could have just chosen one of those lists and just used that. But I gave you the option of which one you want
sure,
to go. So it's because your decision, I'm already kind of catering it towards you. You preferred movies out of everything else that I had. So we went with
sure.
movies. And I kind of play around with those ideas of what would someone like. I know you're a comic now. So now
Yeah,
I've had more routines or stuff to do live. I would maybe play on that. What do I know about comedy? What do I know comics do? What do I know comedians like? Stuff like that. People that are in real estate, people that are chefs. Chefs, maybe I'll do something with groceries, right? Props, like food would be fun, making food appear, making ingredients appear, or guessing their favorite dish, stuff like that. So I kind of cater that towards what people might enjoy the most.
So, I did my due diligence on you, watched all your videos, and
Mhm.
I think I went through Instagram and YouTube and TikTok
Mhm.
and all this good stuff, and saw that you do a lot of magic tricks for some pretty notable people,
Yes.
and so is the term celebrity magician not that you're a celebrity magician, but that you do magic tricks for celebrities, or where did that all come
Um,
about?
I think it's both, honestly, because when I first got the term, and the term came from there was a article written about me in a publication called New York Weekly,
I read it.
and their headline was celebrity magician Josh Pele, and they talked about just in general the magic that I do. I believe it mentioned some of the names I did, but it wasn't going off saying I've done so many different. It was just talking about how I am a very unique asset in nightclubs. I do a lot of nightclub magic. I do a lot of hospitality related stuff in venues that people wouldn't. When you're a nightclub owner, you don't think we need a magician. When you're a restaurant owner, you might think a magician, but you don't put that on your first list when you're like, how do I run a restaurant? What do I need for an event? You think of, your staff, your waiters, your servers, all that stuff. You don't think magician. Almost everything I do is no one ever thinks magician first. Once the magician idea is in their mind, then they're like, I like it and it would be great and it works. And so that article brought out that I'm a celebrity magician. And I was like, wow, like that's how the media sees me. That's kind of what I've been pushing. That's my brand. And now since that article came out, there's been like that article came out about like 5 months ago was that first one. And I think since then there's been like 20 or maybe 17 or 18, more than 15, maybe not 20 yet, articles. And I've been featured on New York Weekly, Yahoo, Bloomberg, Fox, CBS, a lot of big places, and they all use that term celebrity. So I realized that I'm a celebrity in that sense. And I guess some
Sure.
people would say maybe you're not that famous. That's okay. I guess everyone has their definition of what a celebrity is. But for me, if they're calling me that and people are recognizing my work, my videos, a lot of people say I've seen this video before when I show them. Like someone was like, show me one of your favorite videos you made. And they're like, oh, I've seen this before. That's a cool moment. When I'm some in random place or a crowded place or anywhere, and someone comes up and recognizes me, that's kind of cool. So I do have that happen. And then, like you said, there's also a lot of notable people, a lot of celebrities that I perform for. So I think the celebrity magician term goes to both me and myself as a celebrity, because I have an audience, fan base, a lot of
Sure.
press written about me, and it's growing by the day. And at the same time, I meet a lot of people who have made a lot of more press, a lot more famous, or on their run. They have, they're movie stars, actors, singers, rappers, everything. So I think the celebrity term goes into both those avenues for myself.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to be on a lot of lists. I'm on a lot of lists too, but like kind of like the no fly list, and the Catholics have it out for me, and things of that nature. But what's the you brought up restaurant.
Mhm.
And for restaurant, I knew a restaurant manager one time that did this. I thought it was ingenious. He It was like a busy day, like Valentine's Day or something like that. He knew he was going to be on a wait. He knew that maybe people sitting down were going to wait a little longer for their food. So what he did is he hired a magician to go around to the tables, and if people didn't have their food yet, they were to basically occupy them. And I thought that was genius. Have you done anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. Restaurants hire me to go around table to table and do my stuff. And it's, brilliant. It's not just when, for example, even Valentine's Day, I actually do have a show next week on Valentine's Day at a restaurant
Nice.
that's sold out for that very reason. It's beautiful because when you go to a restaurant, right, you're excited to eat, you're excited to have, whatever food you might have heard of, people might have recommended, or just to have food. You might just be hungry.
Sure.
And then you're excited to go. You're excited when the food comes here. Then there's that gap of when you're waiting for your food, which isn't always pleasant, especially if the restaurant's backed up. And for me, as a magician, I'm that perfect bridge because I will come to your table. I will perform for you. You're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. And by the time I finish, your food is going to come. And like
Yep.
I make people forget that they were waiting on their food. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. So now the experience goes from excited, waiting, excited again to excited nonstop. It's like a full circle that doesn't break. And so I am the perfect person to be used for that. They come in excited about the restaurant. They have this entertainment that they love from the restaurant, and they love the food. It's like it's basically taking the restaurant's experience, which maybe the food's really good. It's a 5-star restaurant, but maybe the wait was a little long. So on that day, these people want to give it 4 stars, and it's bringing that 4 stars up to 6 stars because it's going above and beyond. Not only are they getting delicious food and everything, but they also have entertainment they didn't expect, which is an X factor that just kind of pushes that restaurant over the top compared to other places people may have visited.
So, y- you know, there's a question that I really like, that I ask a lot of people when they do specific things. Like for me, I truly believe in the healing power of laughter, and I think that it's almost like a superpower to be able to make somebody laugh. How can people use maybe magic in their own life, everyday life, um, to better the world or some shit like that?
I think that comes down to just being creative. Like some people would say, "Oh, I'm not a creative person," or "I'm not this," or "I'm not that," and then I think that's not true. I think a lot of things that people do in their daily lives are just so minimal to themselves that they don't consider it. For example, look at my room. I have so much done. Like I had this like space, I put a bunch of decks on it. It's not really anything crazy. It's not hard to put a deck on a wall and it looks very
Right.
cool. And a lot of and like for me it feels like, oh, but some people say, oh, that was so creative. That's such a good, and like the same thing with a lot of people, different ways, things you do when you set up your room, right? You're not trying to be the Mona Lisa or the next best art gallery, but you set your stuff up in a very cool way. And that's creative. But you might not think you're a creative person. If you put something up your own way, that's your own version of it. You're creative. And I think that to make magic in your life is just to kind of look back at the little things that you do, things you don't even usually do, like maybe organizing or cleaning. I'm going to like the most basic stuff and just acknowledging that if someone else had to do the same thing, same room, same items, same stuff, it would look completely different than what you have it set up. No one would make it exactly identical. And for that reason, you're unique, you're creative. And so looking at in that aspect, right? Like everything you do from the simplest things to the more complex things is your own version and your own way. That just remember, like if you're going through something, only you can get through it, right? And the way you're going to get through it is a way that no one else has. And so pushing yourself to be creative, showing others, right? You don't see yourself as creative, but you could point out the creativity in others and vice versa. And so, like, pointing things out for other people that might not be so obvious to them and honestly usually aren't, might be something that makes them reconsider how they're doing things, which makes make them think about things differently, which might change their mindset, which might, make them happy, make them smile, because things that they took advantage of, took for granted, or didn't really appreciate might turn into things where they're looking back and like, wow, I really did all this stuff. And now the whole angle is much more positive. And moving forward, they continue that mindset. It could be a very powerful thing.
So, is there a secret to either magic or mentalism? Like, can anybody do it?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is people are like, I could never be a magician. And that's not true. I think can everyone be a working magician? No. But can everyone be a magician? Yes. Can everyone be a working mentalist? No. Can everyone be a mentalist? Yes. Because all it takes is to be a magician. All you need is one trick. And I genuinely mean that. If you go on YouTube right now and Google any teach me a magic trick and whatever videos pop up, if it takes 10 minutes to watch the tutorial and learn it, and then you right then and there can go and do it, you're a magician. That's all it takes. You're a hobbyist and you enjoy it and you know magic, but you are a magician. And I would consider you one. I don't know what other magicians would, but I don't care what other magicians think.
Right.
And so I think that to be someone like me who does this for a living, to get shows, and there's a lot more that goes into that. Obviously, the skill, the practice, the time. Not that might not be fair, but to just be one, yes, I think you just go out. And I think that's what people don't realize when they compare themselves to people that do things like, oh, I could never be a yoga instructor. Yeah, you probably don't want to put 200 hours in for that, but you could do yoga, right? You can go to a class. I could never be a dancer. You could maybe not per living, but you can go to dance classes and learn some moves. With every single thing that people do, you can be a skier, a dancer, a singer. You might not be doing it for a living and you might not make your living off of it, but you can become any of those things. What
Sure.
if you can sing a song? How does that not make you a singer? If you can do a choreographed dance, how does that not make you a dancer, right? If you can do a magic trick, why wouldn't you be a magician for that, right? So people have this like gap between comparing themselves to professionals and saying, oh, I can never. Yes, you can't be a professional in it per se. Maybe that's not for you, but you could be, the person, that type of event, and anyone can be a comedian if you have some jokes. You might not be a good one. That's very different. But you could be, if you have some jokes, you're a comedian. If you have some moves, you're a dancer. If you have some songs you can sing, then you're a singer. It doesn't matter what your level. It's about if you do it or you can do it, then why can't you consider yourself one? You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. You just need to do what you enjoy.
What do you like? Every entertainer has something that they like to specifically communicate, no matter what they do. I mean, I don't care if you're Louis C.K. I don't care if you're Joel Osteen. Um, that's going to be. I'm going to get some tweets about that one tomorrow. But if you're on a stage, you're in front of people. I don't care who you are. A lot of everybody's got some sort of um, story or something that they want to communicate,
Mhm.
some theme to their act. What's yours?
Mine is like, I think mine is just do it. My brand right now it's very strong. I have a good reputation, a lot of great shows, and a lot of success. But when I first started it, like that plane ride in Italy, I learned one card trick, and I literally
Sure.
just went with that one card trick and instantly tried to do it all. I tried to get shows, I tried to do this, and it worked. Somehow, I found people that wanted to hire. They weren't, the crazy luxurious shows that I have now, but I got shows booked back then when I didn't have the expertise as a business, as a magician, as anything. And I did it. But now, I kept with it. Now I'm doing very well. I think that my goal is to remind people like I'm doing so well. Like you like where I'm at. When I started, I was pushing myself, saying I was at this level when I wasn't, and now I am. I think that my message is just go for it. Literally do it. Why not? It's not life or death. If you don't do it, that's okay. And you just be okay with that. But imagine that you do it. How awesome would that feel? You know, and the only way to
Sure.
do it is by trying. If you wait later, then it's not going to be the same thing. Go today. Do something today. Why not?
Now, most of, and I know we're running out of time here, but most of your tricks, I gather, are custom.
Yes, yes.
Like you didn't like take one like an old one you saw for YouTube and just like kind of change this and that, and yeah,
Yeah,
because like
so I could.
I, I don't know if it's the same in the magician realm, but like I don't know if you follow people like Carlos Mencia or some like or Dane Cook who have been accused of stealing jokes.
Mm.
That's kind of a no-no in our realm, and I didn't know if two magicians do the same trick or if they do the same iteration of a trick. How's that work?
So magic is very, very old. There's pretty much no tricks in the world that are 100% new, and almost every trick done nowadays dates back to hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's very hard to kind of go all the way back to the original owner. So when you're doing, historic routines, it's kind of like a free go. It's okay if magicians do it. It's okay to do it. If a magician comes out with his own version of it, like his own routine, and everyone sees like that's not his trick, but the way he does it, that's his kind of way. Kind of like you come up with your own joke
Sure.
and you do it. That can be kind of seen as that's that guy's version. If Now a lot of magicians are okay with other people doing their version of the trick. Some magicians even teach it, and if that's the case, then yeah, there's no issue with sharing or doing it a way someone else does. And others, they don't like when people steal. It's really about like a marketing thing. If you're marketing off that effect, like you come up with this nuanced routine and you're trying to sell it as your own, then you can get in a lot of trouble. And it's very difficult to prove it's your own. They're so hard to like you can't get really a patent or copyright on magic because it's an idea. There's no way to prove that that idea is yours. But so it's almost impossible in that legal aspect to prevent it. But the magic community is very small. If you're kind of doing something along those lines, people will find out, and people that make the props will stop selling to you. People that do stuff will kind of cut you off. So you kind of have to know if the routine you're doing is your own version. It's okay. If you know you're stealing someone else's, you have to know if are they okay with other people performing it that way. And if they are, yes. If not, then you shouldn't be. And so some magicians, like there's been a lawsuit. Teller actually was the first ever person to win a case to prove that a trick was his, but it's very, very difficult in that realm. So you kind of have to know if you're genuinely like doing something the same way as someone else and you have no idea. I mean, you can't really be at fault for that. You had no way of knowing if you actively like tried to figure out and discover, because again, it's type of literature that's not everywhere. It's very, very hard to find that. And some people are historians. They'll be like, that was published in 1928 in this guy's book. And other people like, I can't even tell you who wrote a book last year. So with that, you have to know what you're doing, like what the effect is, what the routine is. And sometimes magicians sell their own tricks. They make a prop, they show you how to use it, and they sell it. And they either say, do what you want with it, or some say you can perform it, but no video recordings of it. I don't want you publishing this in video format on YouTube or on radio, on podcasts, or just yeah, it's usually that. They usually kind of say you can use it for how you want it, or you can perform it, but don't record it. So that's really everything.
Um, Real quick, what's the biggest stage you've been on?
The biggest stage I've been on, hmm, I'm not sure, honestly. A lot of like my stage shows have been smaller in terms of
Okay.
like maybe like 200, 300 people, but I've had certain like close-up gigs where I made sure like I went around to everyone. I did probably like 2,000 people in a day.
Okay.
Probably a couple thousand people was my biggest stage, but it wasn't a
Okay.
stage show, which is the interesting part.
Sure. Have you thought about like America's Got Talent or anything like that?
Yeah, I've considered it. Right before COVID, I was like given an opportunity to like pursue that and audition the first round or whatever. I don't know the whole ladder of
Yeah,
audition
me neither.
step to TV, but I got to that part. I had like a rep from them contact me and give me the official forms, and I was going to do it. And then COVID hit,
Right.
and I had the opportunity to audition virtually. I can do virtual tricks. As you see, I have a full virtual show that I do and I can do it. But for me, I didn't feel that the virtual tricks I do are my best Josh Pele magic. They're just
Sure.
magic that I've done with my twist. They're not my Josh Pele magic that I want the world to see as like that's the one thing. That's what they know me as. So I
Right.
didn't want to do the virtual stuff. COVID, is gone, and I just kind of started doing very well with everything else. The articles, the celebrities, these. I haven't really thought about it. I do get asked that a lot. It's on my list potentially, but I'm still kind of deciding like I have so much stuff that I could do on that stage. Like 2 minutes is a lot for a magician. There's a lot I can do in a 2 minute span. So for me, I'm deciding what would be my favorite thing to start off my 2 minutes. That opener that I did today, that's not going to be my America's Got Talent opener. That's going to be my opener for pretty much everything I do everywhere, but probably not America's Got Talent. So I kind of decided what would scream Josh Pele magic the best for that. And there's no rush to it either, you know. It's always going to be around. It's a very good show, so I'm still kind of playing around with the idea. When do I want to do it? What do I want to do? And see how that goes.
2 minutes is a lot for a comic too, and especially my wife thinks 2 minutes is a long time too. Just kidding. But real quick, where can our listeners find you?
Sure. I'm Josh Pele Magic. That's Josh, Josh, Pele, Pele, Magic, Magic. You could find me on all my socials, which is YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You could find my website, joshpelemagic.com, or you could just Google it and see articles written up about me if you'd like.
Cool. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on with us.
Oh,
I kept you 6 minutes longer than I told you I would.
oh, thank you.
But I appreciate it, and what I always tell every guest when we have a good time is I reserve the right to call you again and
Please do.
to have you on here. I know that our listeners over the week, whenever they get to watching this, whenever they get to listening to the audio, are really going to enjoy this episode. So I thank you much for joining us.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me. It was a great time. Please exercise that right whenever you like. I would love
Uh,
to come back. This was awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir, and we will. I will talk to you soon. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks. And that was Josh Pele uh, there for us. Do want to remind everybody about the Unfiltered Studios other shows. It's Finding Your Way and the Stupid History Minute. And you can find all of those at unfpod.com. Very, very, very good interview tonight with Josh Pele Magic. I enjoyed it immensely, and we look forward to the next time that he's coming on. So next week, got a new guest for you, and I hope you enjoyed this one. But I hope everybody out there enjoys their week. It's unfpod.com. It's 305-563-2342 on the text hotline. It's always open. So for Josh Pele Magic, my name is the Keb, and I will catch you guys next week.